Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Venture Visionaries podcast. I'm your host, Fred Schonenberg, and on today's show, we have Natalia Rodriguez-Hilt, Senior Director of Unidos US, Affiliate Development and Small Business Strategies at Raza Development Fund. Natalia is a seasoned expert in economic and community development with a passion for creating equitable opportunities for underserved communities. Today, we're going to explore Natalia's journey, how she is helping to drive economic opportunity for entrepreneurs in underrepresented communities, and her vision for the future where all sectors of the economy have access to the resources they need in order to grow. So please join me in welcoming Natalia.
Thank you so much, Fred. Really appreciate the invitation, to be here on this podcast and elevate the importance of, supporting our Latino entrepreneurs.
I love it. I'm so excited to chat more with you about it. And maybe for those that don't know, can you introduce us to Raza Development Fund and what the mission of the organization is?
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to do that. So our mission is to unleash the power, potential, and promise of Latino and other under-resourced communities. Raza Development Fund was founded by Unidos US, the largest Latino advocacy organization in the country. And we were founded almost 25 years ago as a nonprofit and community development financial institution. So for those who aren't familiar with the term Community Development Financial Institution, or CDFIs is kind of how we call it for short, these are financial institutions that are certified by U.S. Treasury Department's CDFI fund. They were really created because of the lack of access to capital in low-income communities and for individuals that were considered financially risky. And because the traditional financial institutions weren't lending in these areas or to these individuals, this designation was created for nonprofits to be able to have flexibility and bring in different resources to be able to invest specifically in these areas, to have impact, to be able to partner with other organizations and make a difference. And so that's how they were created. And for us in particular, we were founded because Unidos US didn't feel like the Latino community was really getting the support that they needed to be able to, have their buildings, have their businesses thrive, and so that's why we were founded, really to focus in particular on the Latino community. But we work with a lot of different communities, but just in particular, we are mostly Latino staff, multilingual staff. And so our focus is really in particular on that community. And we are able to and have been lending to organizations that are doing work in healthcare, affordable housing, education, entrepreneurship, and more recently, climate resiliency.
How can you talk maybe about your specific role? Because I think one of the things that's evident to me is the opportunity here, specifically for Hispanic and Latinx entrepreneurs, small businesses, to kind of take ideas and drive innovation to maybe change some of these narratives and recreate the economic opportunity. So would love to understand your specific role within RDF.
Yeah, within RDF, I have my team focuses on two items, and I love what I get to do at the organization. One is our partnership with Unidos US. They have a network of 300 Latino organizations across the country that are serving the community, providing different services. So I get to work with them to support that network of organizations in terms of nonprofit development, connecting them with resources. But the other component is really in that small business space and really leading our work in small business and entrepreneurship at Raza Development Fund. And so what that has looked like historically, we've had a number of different initiatives and programs, providing loans to those entrepreneurs directly. And to date, we've lent over $23 million to Latino small businesses. And it's really been an incredible experience. And I mean, it's so rewarding. There couldn't be a better job, really. But more recently, we really shifted in our strategic planning process to say, okay, we've become a really large CDFI, and we look around us and we don't see a whole lot of other Latino-led and serving CDFIs really meeting the needs of those Latino entrepreneurs. And so our strategy has really shifted to say, how can we build up that ecosystem of capital providers? So right now we're building out our strategy to really focus on lifting up and growing and scaling other Latino CDFIs with the end goal that they will be able to meet and serve more Latino entrepreneurs with various resources, including loans, other technical assistance and services. So that's been kind of a shift for us that we've been now on this journey of. But historically, we've done a lot of different loan products and programs to better serve those entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's crazy interesting. And I know we talked ahead of time about this a little bit, but I sit on the board of Angeles Investors, which is one of the fastest growing angel investing groups, and it's focused on Hispanic and Latinx. And we often talk about the gap just on the venture capital side for Latino-owned businesses, and it's just nuts, right? Like, and I know we shared some of these ahead of time, but like Latino-owned businesses have grown by 34% in the last 10 years. They represent more than 50% of the population in the U.S., but only receive somewhere between 1% and 2% of all VC dollars. And like, we talk about this at almost every meeting with Angeles, and every time I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And it's also very similar if you look at female founders, American founders, and it's there's a lot of systemic reasons for it, right? But I would love to know from your perspective, how is RDF working to bridge this gap, whether it's on the doesn't have to be the angel and venture space, but more so this the small business, the Latino-owned growth that is being seen, but the traditional ways of funding it don't exist currently.
Right. Yeah. And I think the way that I like to look at it is that the entrepreneur is going to, be at different places, and the hope is that they grow, and they're going to be at different business stages. At each business stage, they're going to need different resources, right? And we know this. And so how we think about it is, what does the capital landscape look like? What are the resources that exist, right? Because we do need venture capital groups. We do need banks. We need CDFIs, right? We need all of these different capital providers because they each provide something different that a business is going to need at a different point, right? And by industry too. And so we think about it in that way, and we say, okay, what are the gaps, right? And so when we think of the gaps, we do see a lot of gaps in terms of the CDFIs and what loan products are offering. So in my experience, I've worked in communities where a lot of organizations are offering just microloans, right? And microloans are absolutely needed, but there's going to be a point where they need more money than a microloan, right? A business is going to need larger amounts or structured in different ways, or we talk about them getting a big contract. How are they going to get the resources, right, to then do the work and then get the money, right? So I think it's just thinking about like a bigger perspective. And part of our role that we see, especially in this new strategy, is saying, how can we help CDFIs and other lenders think about their market, think about it in that way, and what are the gaps that exist? And then also really push CDFIs to think outside the box. So some CDFIs can do venture capital funds. Other CDFIs, though, can be even creative within, their nonprofit lending to think about equity-like products, revenue-based financing. It's something that's newer, and it does take a little bit of work to really figure out how to structure it. But, we've seen a lot of different CDFIs doing this already and having a lot of success in piloting more innovative equity-like products and not just debt-based, financing. So I think for us, we're just trying to bring more education and awareness of what's out there. How have others approached this? What's possible? What resources do you need in place to do that? Because I still feel like it's still a mystery when it comes to thinking about equity kind of based products and financing. That's just not something that gets talked about a lot in the Latino community. And so I think as organizations and capital providers, though, we've got to understand what's possible, right? To be able to then create something and then educate the entrepreneur about how that gets structured and how it gets done.
I'm so interested in this as like a subject because the name Venture Fuel comes from a conversation with a founder 10 years ago where they were telling me about raising money nonstop with VC. And I said, you have to stop. I was like, there's a better way to fuel your venture. You need to go get commercial deals. Like you need revenue, don't take on equity, right? Get revenue. And it's very interesting to see the evolution where, banks very smartly are saying, hey, hold on a second, like there's a way to do this that is revenue based, that is like an equity like product that is not debt. And I think that there's a demand for it. And you're
Yeah,
right, there's not a lot of awareness around it.
Yeah, and I'd say like CDFIs in particular, I think have a role to play in that space because look, we're nonprofits, we're mission oriented, and it's all about the impact, right? And we have the ability to have that flexibility in how we design something. And then we're also able to fundraise, right? Fundraise grant resources and pull together resources to then channel it in these types of products and into the community. And I think that's really our goal because we see a lot of disconnections, right, between groups. And so our goal is to say, how can we make those connections happen so that those resources can really go where they're needed?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this, revenue related. There's research done by the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative that the gap in access to capital is leaving upwards of 2.1 trillion in additional revenue potential for the 4.3 million Latino-owned businesses, and the positive impact to the U.S. economy is, so large. What approaches are you all thinking about to unlock this revenue potential? And maybe it's what we were talking about, but curious, just seeing those numbers again, it's like there's money being left on the table. And so curious how you're thinking about enabling it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think it's an important statistic that everyone needs to be aware of. Latinos are really building America, right? I mean, we have the largest, highest labor force participation rates, more than any other, racial or ethnic group. And, in terms of starting businesses, we're starting them right faster and more, than any other group. And even in spite of the barriers that have existed, we are still contributing, Latino businesses are contributing over 800 billion in revenue, right? So I think there's a lot to be said about the economic impact of what if we actually did invest more intentionally, right? Like how much more of a multiplier effect would that have, right? So I think for us, with our previous programs, the way we've been trying to unlock the revenue and make sure it flows is structuring our loans and any resources that we provide in such a way to be able to reduce the amount of barriers a Latino entrepreneur might be facing, right? And so we work with I-10 borrowers. We have multilingual staff. We have really strong partnerships with other organizations that provide services to support the individual and their family, and then also their business, right? Because it takes a village. We can't do this alone. And so it really takes those partners coming alongside us and that entrepreneur to provide a more type of holistic support. The other thing is we, chose to work with startups, which not a lot of financial institutions want to, work with startups. So that was something else that we were intentional about doing to really say, we've got to unlock this revenue. We've got to be able to believe and say the Latino community is worth investing in. And we believe in them, right? I think the other area because of our position, I think nationally, is really in the area of advocacy. So I think really talking to these philanthropic groups, talking to traditional financial institutions, and really having them rethink how they've been, engaging with Latino entrepreneurs and just what they're putting in place as entry level requirements, right? And just, are those really needed, right? Do we really have to have them in place? Is there something else that we can, ask for that would help get you to where you're trying to go, right? So I think that's something else that we try to do. And then I think even just our own organization's history, I think that we've lent over $1 billion and we have an S&P rating of AA minus. And so we like to say we're proof ourselves, right, that these investments are good investments. They're not risky investments in the Latino community. And then, what I mentioned earlier about just helping CDFIs also just rethink, how they've maybe been taught traditionally to do underwriting. Like, well, actually, let's look at it differently. And so I think those are some of the ways that we've been just really trying to close that gap and just continue to funnel more resources, and anything that would hold it back, just really try to, okay, let's really think about this though. Like, does it have to be that way? What if we did it this way? Would that change things? And just be open to thinking more creatively.
Yeah, I'd love it. It's so interesting when you were talking about it. I remember when I launched Venture Fuel, going to a bank and just being like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, hey, can I like have a line of credit?" Because we're doing these things and cash flow and we're moving really fast. And that process was the most depressing thing I did in launching my business, right? And it was like we
Yeah,
figured
right,
out all these, like they're like the underwriting, the degree of stuff I had to show in order to
right,
get this
right.
line of credit. And I went through it. It was brutal. I think I got something, but not what I was hoping. Whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
made it work. And then it's very interesting. Then all of a sudden, they started being like, "Oh yeah, now we're extending your line of credit. We're extending just based on performance." And I get that to some degree, but it's funny. It's like when you needed the money, it was almost
Mm-hmm.
impossible to get. When you don't need
Exactly.
it, oh, it's there, whatever you want.
Right.
And
When you've shown that it's successful, it's everyone's, wants to give you money now.
totally. And I think about that like we were fortunate that we found product market fit and we did the things right that enabled that. But a lot of businesses need time to get
Mhm.
going. And like we're a services industry, so we did not have like overhead. And you spoke to like what happens when you get the big order.
Mhm.
Man,
Right.
you have to go fill that order. You have to spend the money first to make the money. And so I think what you're doing is so valuable and important. And it is, as a founder, it is such a necessary thing because the models that are out there are not founder friendly in general,
Right.
much
Exactly.
less when you start to get into all the other biases that are involved. So it's really special. Are there any collaborations or innovative things that you're doing that you haven't talked about yet that you would like to share with the audience that kind of showcase how you all are thinking about things?
So I'd say definitely partnerships are key, right? I said earlier, we can't do this alone. We've got to have partners in place to better serve the entrepreneur, but also even just to complement and challenge our own way of doing things, right? That we're constantly learning that too. And so, nationally, we have different key partnerships that we're trying to connect and be able to pull together those resources and make sure that these community-based organizations are aware of what's out there, right? Because in some cases, they might be the only, Latino serving organization in their community, right? And so they have a lot of Latino entrepreneurs relying on them. So, we've established a lot of partnerships to support that. But I think one particular partnership that was really impactful and I think just goes kind of to prove some of the points we've talked about today is a couple years ago there was a program that we were a part of with Wells Fargo called Open for Business, and we had a local partner. We're headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. We had a local partner, the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, that was providing technical assistance to entrepreneurs. And in that partnership, we were able to establish a really great loan program that was very easy to access, as few barriers, to entry as possible, and low interest rate, really flexible for the entrepreneur to use for whatever they needed, for growth. And so, as a part of that, we were able to connect with so many entrepreneurs, but one in particular that just comes to mind is a business called JM Custom Ironworks. The founder is from Mexico. He had moved to Arizona with his family and his three sons. And his goal with starting this business, doing welding, was to be able to provide for his family. And one of the goals was also to be able to pay for college for his sons. And so he needed access to capital, though, to be able to buy more equipment, to be able to offer more services, and be able to grow the business to be able to get to that level. So we were able to provide an investment of $100,000 into the organization, and they were able to get what they needed. And as a result of that investment, now kind of fast forward a few years, his three sons have gone to college. They've actually gotten their master's degrees in mechanical engineering, and they're now co-owners of this business and working with the family business. They were able to hire a lot more employees because with that equipment, they were able to access larger contracts. So they needed more staff. They hired employees. Additionally, they're bringing in other businesses that offer other trades on some of these larger contracts. And so now you have other businesses that are, benefiting right from this growth and this opportunity. And I think for me, it just goes to show like that small investment a few years ago has paid off in so many ways and created this economic ripple effect, right? Because now other businesses are accessing contracts they wouldn't otherwise. This business was able to add more services, because they have now the equipment to do it. So I think it's just examples like that of, if we can invest in that, like the growth that they can achieve, right, with just that small investment. And it's just exciting that it's, still a family business. The sons have, accomplished what the dad was really hoping to be able to do through his business. And now they're running it together, they're back at home running it together.
That's such a great story. Yeah, it's funny. I have a 5-year-old, and I said to him at breakfast the other day because he said something kind of smart. I'm like, "Hey, you want to come work for me?" And he was like, "Dad, I'd love to." And like my wife was like, "Oh, please no!" Like,
right.
So I don't know if that's a mixed blessing, but it's an awesome story.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for folks listening who want to get involved, that maybe want to help unlock access to capital for Hispanic and Latinx small businesses and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, the first thing is if you are wanting to engage with the Latino community and Latino entrepreneurs and you haven't before, a key thing is just approaching the organizations that are led by Latinos and serving that community already, and just learning from them, shadowing them, and really getting to embed in the community, understand how the community operates. We're very relationship oriented, very community oriented, family oriented, food oriented. So you always got to have food at whatever you have, but I think just like really understanding the community, and I think that will help kind of demystify, right, some things or assumptions maybe that we have about the community. I think the other thing is just really for any lenders is, like I said, just rethinking like your underwriting criteria or your credit box, and just thinking about, is that really necessary, and is that another barrier that we're adding for entrepreneurs, right? And so just kind of rethinking some of the things. What else could you do? What else could you offer differently? There's a lot of really, really innovative practices out there, really great articles that have been written about how to, work with I-10 borrowers. So I think there's a lot of resources out there to kind of guide that. And then just the other thing I would add for any groups that have access to grant funding, any philanthropic groups, just to continue to, provide resources that are flexible, really trusting in that partner that they know what's best for the Latino community, that have been serving the Latino community for years. So, those are some of the things that I'll recommend. If anyone wants to, talk with me and we can talk a little bit more about our experience working with Latino entrepreneurs, very happy to connect and be a resource and connect you with, partners of ours that are doing different things in this space too. So we're always open to that.
I love that. And where would you direct people to go to learn more about RDF?
So RDF, I would say our website, razafund.org, razafund.org, or following us on social media. We're always trying to share the stories and really showcase the partners that we have that are doing amazing things in communities. So those are a couple ways I would say if you want to follow us on social media just to kind of keep up. I think that would be great for you to just continue to be reminded of, okay, how are we thinking about this, right? How are we working with Latino entrepreneurs?
Awesome. Well, Natalia, thank you so much for your time
Absolutely.
And for all that you're doing to spark change. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.